Well, you have me today.
James is gone. I told Betsy I was going to preach, and she laughed. After what Rod said about using artificial intelligence, I probably should have done the same thing. All right. So what I wanted to talk about is, what does God want from us, and what does He want from all people? You know, if you think about it, God doesn't need our money. He doesn't need our advice. He doesn't need our abilities to do anything that He wants to accomplish. But He does want something. So what does He want? Let's look at man in the garden there. It says God made man in His own image, and which is pretty unique, because all the other animals, they're just animals, but He made God like Himself in His own image. And if you see what happened is, Adam and Eve, they had this garden, they were living in a very good place. They sinned, and immediately after that, God must have been coming to the garden pretty regular to visit with them and to see them, because right off the bat they make coverings for themselves to hide their nakedness. It must have not been a very good covering, because when they heard God coming in the garden, they hid themselves. And then God says, "Where are you?" Apparently He had a good relationship with man, and he appreciated visiting with him, and He wanted, a relationship. He wanted to know where they were, and then He already knew where they were, but they had to fess up with it. But apparently He came to visit, and He came to have a relationship with them. And we know what God really wants from us, because when Jesus was asked what was the greatest commandment, He says, the greatest commandment is, and I'll read it here. It's Deuteronomy 6:4 says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might." So He wants us. He says that's the greatest commandment of all the things that if you go through the books of the law, there's a jillion commandments there. I mean, there's a lot. It's kind of overwhelming of what they had to do, all the sacrifices and the Sabbaths they had to keep, and to not steal, not commit murder. But to say that the greatest commandment is to love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your might. He points that out, and then He says the second commandment is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. And then Jesus said, on this hangs the law and the prophets. So everything that was written and everything that was spoken by the prophets comes back to this thing, that we should love the Lord, and we show our love by how we do with our neighbor there. But think about it, as love is a command. Now this is kind of, it's a hard concept, because, we have this thing about falling in love, and you just, can't help yourself on that kind of a thing. But it's strange to say to command you to love somebody. So that tells you that you have it, and you can give it. So and you can give it at will. In the Greek language, there's three words for love, and we all know that there's eros, which is the romantic love, and there's philos, which is the brotherly love, and then there's agape, which is the godly kind of a love. And that people make a big deal of that. But it's kind of funny that in English, you just get this one word for all this stuff, and it covers all of that love, plus even more, because, I can't see one in the Greek on any of these, brotherly love or romantic love between a man and a woman, or godly love says, I love football. I love apple pie. I love, we use it, we even expanded it. But it's kind of funny to me that to make the point of these concepts of what love is, the language hasn't changed a little bit to compensate for that in English, but it hasn't. But the language compensates all the time. When I worked for the city of Abilene, I rode on the back of a garbage truck, and I was referred to as a garbage man or a trash man. Now they changed it. I would have been a sanitation worker. Or, the guy that works at the school, I saw, just when I went to school, his name changed his job description changed 3 times, but he did the same thing. First he was a janitor, and then they said, don't use that word anymore, use it custodian. So then he was a custodian, and then he was a maintenance engineer. And now it's back to he's a janitor, I think. But the language changes, but this word love, we kept using it. But I don't think, if you think about it, that I was looked it up because I'd heard that in some Eskimo languages that there's like over 50 words for snow. And if you think about that, and in some of the Eskimo languages, there was even more, and there was some controversy about that. Was it just adding on suffixes and things? But one guy, he definitely had different words for snow. But if you think about it, all those words just refer back to ice crystals in some form or another. I mean, and so we got love as, let's just look at it as a whole today. So, so I have a friend, and he asked his dad, he was dating different girls, he was a young guy, and he asked his dad, he says, how am I going to know when I'm in love? And I thought that was a pretty precocious thing to ask, because I wouldn't ask my dad that, but he asked his, and I'm sure he did. And his dad gave him a reply, and it went kind of like this. He says, when you're in love, you want to be with that person, okay? And you think of that person all the time, and you try to please that person. You want to be entertain. You want to entertain that person. You want to talk and share with that person. You want that person to be happy. You don't want to offend the person, and you want to know all about the person. You offer protection to the person, and you don't deceive the person. And that you could go on and on. But those, I thought, If you get those kind of feelings when you fall in love, and ask yourself, if you really love God, would that list apply to you? Would that list apply? I think it's a good question, because do you want to know about more about Him? Do you want to hear what He has to say? Do you want to offer yourself to Him? Do you want, all these things would apply to that. The Bible not only tells us, but indicates that we have control of the intensity of our love. In Matthew 24:12, it says, Jesus speaks of how in the last days that the love of some will grow cold. And it talks about that in it talks about that in Revelation 2, where when he's talking to the church in Ephesus, he says that he tells them that their love isn't what it what it was. It needs to be up. But if you think about it, so this love that we can give or we can keep is something of value. It's something that God wants, and it's something we can withhold. It's something we can ignore, or something we can use on other things. We can use all our love on ourselves, which is easy to do. We also can limit our love to just those that love us, and that's, some people do that. Like, love has a limited quantity and they can only use it on so many people. But in reality, the more that you spread it around and the more that you use it, is that it seems like there's an ever increasing amount of it. But but to look at what love should mean to us, I thought it'd be a good idea just to look in the book of 1 John, because he talks a lot about it. And I was just going to read the scriptures that had the word love, and there's a couple other sentences that go before some of these, but I thought it'd be good just to go through that book and list the things that he talks about love, because it deals a whole lot with it. And it kind of tells you what, if you do love the Lord, what you'll be doing with that love. So let me put my glasses on. He says, so here we go. I won't give the name of the verse. It's this first one's I will, but it's in the 2nd chapter, verse 5. But it says, whoever keeps his word, in him truly the love of God is perfected. By this we may be sure that we are in him. Whoever says he abides in him ought to walk in the same way in which he walked. So this is Jesus going to talk about God's love and what our love should be. Do not love the world or the things of the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. See what kind of love the Father has given to us, that we should be called children of God. And so we are. The reason why the world does not know us is that it did not know him. By this, it is evident that you are children of God, and that who are the children of the devil. Whoever does not practice righteousness is not of God, nor is the one who does not love his brother. For this is the message that you have heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. We know that we have passed out of death into life because we love the brothers. Whoever does not love abides in death. By this we know love, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers. But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet chooses his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth. And this is the commandment, that we believe in the name of the Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another just as he has commanded us. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. In this, the love of God was made manifest among us, that God sent his only Son into the world, that we might live through him. And this is love, not that we have loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the propitiation for our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God abides in us, and his love is perfected in us. By this we know that we abide in him, that he is in us, because he has given us his Spirit, and we have seen and testify that the Father has sent his Son to be the Savior of the world. Whosoever confesses that Jesus is the Son of God, God abides in him, and he in God. So we have come to know and to believe the love that God has for us. God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. But this is love perfected with us, so that we may have confidence from the day of judgment, because as he, so also are we in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not been perfected in love. We love because he first loved us. If anyone says, I love God, and hates his brother, he is a liar. For he who does not love his brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. And this commandment we have from him: whoever loves God must also love his brother. Everyone who believes that Jesus is the Christ has been born of God, and everyone who loves the Father loves whomever has been born of him. By this we know that we love the children of God, when we love God and obey his commandments. For this is the love that God, we keep his commandments. So it tells you, that God loved us. So, if you look at, I was wanting to look that, who does God tell us to love? If you look in the Bible, he tells us to love our neighbor. We're to love our brother. We're to love our wife. We're to love one another. And even we're to love our enemies. Now think about that. That's a hard kind of a thing. But we have this thing, and it's the thing, the only thing it's really the only thing we have of value that we can give to God. And that is our love. And the way we demonstrate it is we do what he says, and we love, and he gives us this commandment that we love one another. And now, we all know how to do that, is you look after the best. When you say, how do you love your enemies? And Christ tells you, when he's thirsty, you give him to drink, and when he's hungry, you give him something to eat. And pray, and then he says, pray for those that persecute you. So, this thing's got to be a lot bigger than, as Christians, we need to be demonstrating this as much as we can. And if you think about it, it's so easy to love those that love you. It's easy to, a few years ago they had this big deal about you need to love yourself, so you can love it. I just thought that was ridiculous, because when he said the second commandment, when he said the greatest commandment, the second is like to it. He says, love your neighbor as yourself. So he's just assuming that that we love ourselves, and we put on our clothes, we try to look good, we feed ourselves good, we take ourselves on vacation, we do all these good things for ourselves. So that's not a problem. It's reaching out and putting that love, spending that love. It's something of value, something you can spend, and you need to be spending it on others, is what the Lord says. And the easiest people to love are those that love you, because you have this common bond, but it's harder to love those that don't love you, but we're still supposed to do that. But the easiest of all to love ought to be God, because he loved us first, and he's done all these things for us. He's even offered his Son for us, so that we could get back the relationship that they had in the garden, where we could be with him and be he wants us to be with him, and he wants to take us, and And he wants those that love him. And the last thing I want to read is in James there. It talks about James 1, verse 12. It says, "Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those that love him." So the ones that are going to be able to see God and are going to get the crown of life are going to be those that love him. And he wants us to be demonstrating that we love him. It's one thing to say, just like John said, you don't want to just love and talk, but you want to love in word and deed. You want to be practicing these things. And he tells you how to do it. You do it by reaching out and helping people with their needs, and you do it by studying and by being with the people that love the Lord, and by learning as much as you can, and by using the opportunities that we have to learn more and to practice more and to fellowship more. And the last thing I want to conclude with is, as God called out the sinful man in the garden, he said, "Where are you?" And that's a question that we all need to answer to God. Adam just said, that woman, she deceived me. But that's not going to be the good answer. Where we are, we need to, we're going to have to face him, and we're going to have to, we're going to stand on the blood of Christ that he shed for us. But he loved us because he did it. And he wants us to love him back. So that thing, the value that we have, that you can keep it, you can use it on something else, or you can put it on God. We want to be doing that. All right. So after the sermon, or after the lesson, we'll have a class back then. We'll talk more about this kind of stuff. So please stay for that. Thanks for listening. And if anybody has any needs that wants to be prayed for, or be baptized, or any of that, come forward as we